Hello everyone, this is BreannaRutter from howtoblackhair.com, and I will be teaching you how to do yarn braids on your hair. The name of this style is as simple as it sounds. You will be taking pieces of yarn to weave into your hair for braids for that completed look. Also, this style is interchangeably called Genie Locs as well. The materials that you will need to do your yarn braids will be one large bundle of yarn, hair cutting scissors, a hair comb, hair gel, and a spray bottle to mist your hair with water. Also, once my style is finished, I will be accessorizing my yarn braids. So if you would like to do the same styles, you will need bobby pins and headbands. So once you have all of your materials and supplies ready, in the next step number 2, I will show you in detail how to do your own yarn braids on your hair. Here we are in step 2 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will be showing you in detail, step by step, how to do your own yarn braids. Before we begin braiding, I will first show you how to prepare your yarn pieces. You want to make sure that you've predetermined how long you want the length of your braids to be. Whether you want them above your shoulders, at your shoulders, or below your shoulders, I will show you how to prepare your yarn for your style. Once your yarn pieces are prepared, I will show you step by step how to braid your yarn braids. Before you actually begin braiding your yarn braids, you want to make sure that you've already measured out pieces of yarn that you will be using to braid your hair. So to begin, you want to know exactly how long you want your yarn braids to be. And I want my yarn braids to fall past my shoulders, maybe a little bit above mid-back. So what you want to do to help you as a guide to know how long your yarn pieces will be, you're simply going to take the yarn on the spool you have here, and you're going to unwind a very long amount just to give you an idea of how short or long you want your braids to be. So I'm just going to unwind this off of my yarn piece that I have here, and I'm going to unwind probably about 2 to 3 feet. Now my yarn braids are not going to be that long, but this will help me as a guide to how long I want them to be. So you're going to simply take your scissors and you're going to cut the yarn off from the spool. And now with this extremely long piece that I have here, I have one end of it, and I'm going to take this end and place it where I want it to be. So if I want my yarn braids to be somewhere mid-back or a little higher than mid-back, then it's probably going to be at my rib cage here. So I'm just going to take the end of my yarn piece, just one end, and place it at my rib cage. Now I'm going to bring it up to the side of my head here to stretch and see how long I want it to be. So when I pull the thread up, this is exactly where it meets up to the side of my head, and this point as well goes down to my rib cage. So now what I do is I take this finger that's up here and I leave it there. And I also have my finger here at the bottom. And what I'm simply going to do is let this piece go with this hand so that it can meet down at the bottom of where the yarn is. So where that piece meets here, I'm going to cut it off so that I have an even piece of yarn. So I'm going to place my finger here, and then I'm going to cut this piece of yarn. And now I'm going to remeasure to make sure it's the length I want it to be. So to make sure that the yarn braids fall kind of mid-back or a little bit higher than mid-back, I want to make sure that it hits my rib cage, at least the top of my rib cage. So I'm going to go ahead and find the middle point of this yarn. And I have the 2 pieces that's even down here. And then I'm going to place it at the side of my head to see exactly where it falls. And it falls exactly where I want it to be, right at the top of my rib cage. So now this is the exact length that I would like for my yarn braids to be. If you want your yarn braids to be a lot shorter, you only want them to hit your shoulder, then make sure that you rest your arm See where it falls on your shoulder here, and then you will pinch the yarn and cut exactly where you would want it to be, and that would serve as your length. So now that I have my length of how long I want my yarn to be, I will use this as a guide to cut all of the individual yarn pieces for my braids. So once again, I'm going to take this piece that's the exact length I want it to be, and I'm going to grab the yarn from my spool of yarn, meet the cut piece that I have to the beginning of the yarn, and I'm going to draw both pieces all the way perfectly down as possible that I can. And then where it ends, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut my new piece of yarn to match that length. Now I have two pieces of yarn that are the same length, and if I measure it again to the side of my head, it falls right at the top of my rib cage. So just continue to cut pieces to make sure they're the same length so that all of the lengths of your braids are the same. So once again, I grab my piece of yarn and grab two of my pieces, or just simply one of them since they're the same length. So I'll just use both of them that I've cut, and I'm gonna place this here on this yarn, draw it all the way up to the end, and then I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm going to cut the yarn to make sure it matches. So now I have 3 pieces of yarn, and if I make sure the bottoms are equal and put it back up to the side of my head, it still falls exactly where I want it to be. When you are doing your yarn braids, we will be using 3 pieces of yarn to do so. You could use more yarn, but using more yarn allows you to have bigger braids. So I will show you with these 3 pieces of yarn how you will braid them onto your head. Now that you have already measured out your yarn pieces for your yarn braid, I will show you how to position your hands on the yarn so that you can install the yarn for your yarn braids. So what you need to make sure is that you've already measured out your lengths, and we will be using 3 pieces of yarn. You can use more yarn, you could use maybe 2 pieces, but 3 pieces is the typical size that you want to stick with for your typical yarn size braid. So if you are familiar with doing individual braids like zillions or single braids or box braids, the same technique for position your hands applies even though we are using yarn. But I will be showing you the same technique applies to yarn as well. So what you want to do is make sure that you divide the hair into its parts. So we have 3 pieces of yarn here, and you simply want to divide this into 2/3 and 1/3. So we simply will just take one of the pieces of yarn away from the other yarn. So once you divide that, now it's perfectly broken up, because now in my left hand I have 2/3 of the yarn that I originally had, and in my right hand I have 1/3 of the yarn that I originally had. So next, what you want to do is take your 1/3 and throw it around and wrap it around this 2/3 to form a third part. So now this small piece is going to wrap around this 2/3, just like that. And you're going to bring both the ends together and make sure they're an equal length for all the parts. And now here we have 3 legs for our braid. This third you have here, I brought the piece back around itself, so it looks like now there's 2 pieces, and there's 2 pieces here and 2 pieces here as well. So now you have this hair that's divided equally into 3 parts for your braid, since your braid consists of 3 sections as well. So to further position your hands, what you want to do is take your right hand, the 3 main fingers of your right hand, and position it around that third piece that we had in the beginning. So that small third that wrapped around the 2/3, you want to position 3 of your fingers right there, as close to the meeting point of all the pieces of yarn as possible. Once you do that, you're going to take your left hand, insert your index finger into the middle of these 2 sections here, and your middle finger is on the outside with your thumb on the outside as well, and now the rest of your fingers will wrap around the thread, just like this. So once again, I will show you exactly how you want your hands positioned for the braid. So we're going to take this third off, and bring it back with the 2/3, making sure all of the legs are equal. Now what you do is separate this piece of thread into 1/3 and 2/3. So I'm going to pinch one off, and now it's perfectly separated into 1/3 and 2/3. Now you're going to wrap the third around the 2/3 to form your third leg of your braid. So once all the ends are neat and perfect in length, now you have 3 points for your braid. So the part that was originally 1/3, you're going to take the 3 main fingers of your right hand and position it on the hair there. Then you're going to take your left hand, insert your index finger into the opening of these 2 pieces here. And on the outside you have your thumb, your index finger, and the rest of your hands will go around the hair just like that. So you do it once again, insert your index finger, your thumb, and your middle finger is on the outside, and all the fingers just wrap around the hair. And that's how you want to have your hands positioned. Now, the last step is to simply take your right hand, twirl it underneath, insert your index finger through, and hold that piece of hair there in between your index finger and your thumb. And now this frees your left hand so that you can use your right hand for braiding. So once again, I'm going to show you what just happened. So now that you have your hands positioned on your thread, you're going to take your right hand, firmly holding the hair, you're going to twirl underneath and insert it into that V opening there with just your index finger. And pinch the thread between your index finger and your thumb. And now your right hand is ready to braid while your left hand is free. So now that you know how to position your hands on the pieces of thread, I will show you how to braid your yarn braids. Before you begin braiding your yarn braid, you want to make sure that you've prepped the section of hair that you will be working on. So what you want to do is take your comb and part your hair in a desired section that you want to begin your braid with. Also, you can use a spray water bottle to mist your section of hair to help you part your hair and detangle through as you prepare your hair for your braid. So what I will be doing is taking my spray bottle, and I will just lightly mist this section here that I want to part to help me part my hair. You're going to take your comb and you're going to part a section of hair that you will be working on. I will start by my ear to show you how big you want your part to be. If you are familiar with doing individual braids like box braids, you want to go along with that measurement of how wide or big you want your part to be. So the section here that I will be braiding is about 1/2 inch on both sides, and that's how wide you want your part. So now you're going to take your comb and you're going to detangle through your section of hair. And then you're going to apply a little bit of hair gel to the ends of your hair to begin braiding for your yarn braids. To begin braiding, I will quickly show you once again how to prepare your hands on your yarn. So what you want to do is make sure all the ends are equal to one another. And you're going to take one of the thirds, wrap it around the 2/3, and then the part that was originally a third, you're going to position 3 fingers on your right hand on it, and then take your left hand, insert your index finger, and use the rest of your fingers to hold the hair in place. Once you do that, you're going to twirl your right hand underneath, insert it through this V opening with your index finger. Then you're going to pinch the hair that's in between your index finger and your thumb together. This frees your left hand, and now with your right hand, we are going to begin braiding. So I'm going to go right up to my part where I am on my section of hair here. And now what you want to do is take your left hand and put it over your head to help assist you as you are braiding your first yarn braid. So what you want to do is take your left hand and gather all of the hair with the 3 main fingers of your left hand, which is your thumb, your index finger, and your middle finger. So now what I will do is I will take my right hand and I will open up my index finger and my thumb, and I will grab all of the hair that I have in my left hand in between the index finger and the thumb of my right hand. So I grab all of the hair there with my index finger and my thumb. Now that I'm holding the hair, I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to grab the yarn that's on top, position it with my 3 main fingers, and then I'm going to turn my right hand to the right. So once I turn it to the right, keeping everything nice and tight, I hold the hair with my left hand, I hold the thread with my left hand, then I take my index finger, I insert it through this opening I created. Once I twirled my hand to the right, I hook this bottom piece of thread here, and I add that to my left hand. So now my right hand is free, and my left hand has 2 pieces of section thread. So now I'm going to take my right hand, the 3 main fingers, and I'm going to grab the hair and the thread together. So now once I've done that, I have 2 section pieces of hair in my left hand. I'm going to twirl my left hand to the left, and in this V opening, I'm going to take my index finger, put it through, and hook on that bottom piece of thread there. So I'm going to add that thread to my right hand here, and now my left hand is free once again, and I have 2 separate pieces in my right hand. Every time you have 2 section pieces in either one of your hands, you're going to twirl your hand to the desired direction. So since I have 2 separate pieces in my right hand, I'm going to twirl my hand to the right, and it creates an opening here in between those 2 pieces. And now that I'm holding my left hand to the thread, I take my index finger, I hook the bottom piece with the thread in the hair, and add that to my left hand. And you're going to continue this process a couple more times to make sure that the braid is secure. So now I have 2 different section pieces of yarn in my left hand. In my right hand, the 3 main fingers will hold that piece of hair there. So since I have 2 sections of hair here, I'm going to twirl my left hand to the left. The left hand gets twirled to the left, the right hand gets twirled to the right. So as you see here, 2 pieces. I'm going to twirl that to the left. And in this opening in between those 2 sections, I'm going to hook my right index finger, and I'm going to continue the same process. 2 pieces here, so I twirl my right hand to the right. In this opening, I'm going to hook the index of my left hand. Now 2 pieces are in my left hand, so I twirl my left hand to the left and insert my finger into the opening there and hook the bottom piece. So now you know that you've hooked the braid on pretty securely if you can let it go without it unraveling. And as you can see, a braid started to form here. So from this point, what you want to do is make sure that all 3 pieces are distinct, and you're going to put those pieces into your fingers and continue to braid down to the very bottom. The reason why it's great to put gel at the ends of your hair here is because once I start braiding past the hair, the slick gel on the ends helps the hair to lay really flat with the yarn. So you're just going to keep braiding all the way down to the very end of your yarn braid. Now you're going to continue to braid down until the very bottom until you can no longer go any further. So now once you've braided to the very bottom, what you want to do is grab the end of the braid that you form with your yarn. You want to twirl it around your finger and create a knot. So I'm just simply creating a knot at the very bottom of the yarn braid. Once you create the knot, you're going to pull the knot very tightly as you can and as flat as you can. So you're going to use your fingers to just really flatten that knot and make it extremely tight. Now we're going to take our scissors and you're going to go back to your yarn braid and you're going to cut directly below that knot there. This creates a very safe seal at the end of your braid so that your braid doesn't come down. So if you have any extra thread sticking out of the braid, you're going to simply grab your scissors and just snip those pieces off. And that is your complete yarn braid. Once again, I will show you how to braid your yarn braids. So you will separate a third from the 2/3 of the yarn, wrap the third around the 2/3, position your right hand on that third piece, and now the other piece you will insert your index and wrap the rest of your fingers around the hair, like so. Take your right hand, turn it under, insert the index finger of your right hand and pinch that hair that's underneath your index finger between your thumb and your index finger. And now your left hand is free and your hair is still sectioned in pieces and we are going to braid. So now once you bring your thread up to your hair should already be prepared, sectioned with a little bit of gel at the end. So now with my left hand, what I'm going to do is grab all of the hair securely in my 3 main fingers to make sure I have all the hair here. Gonna take my right hand, open up my index finger and my thumb and grab all of the hair in between my index finger and my thumb. So once I grab all of the hair, I'm gonna take this piece to move it to the side out of the way and position that piece in between my left hand with my 3 main fingers. My right hand has 2 sections of hair, so I will twirl my right hand to the right to create an opening. Take my index finger of my left hand, insert it, and hook that bottom piece of yarn. So now my right hand is free and my left hand has 2 pieces of hair. I take my right hand again, the 3 main fingers, grab the hair and the thread. And since my left hand has 2 pieces of section here, I'm going to twirl my left hand to the left. And in between the opening that I've created, I'm going to hook my index finger on that bottom piece of thread to add to that hand. And now I have one section in my left hand with my 3 main fingers. And once again, the section that has 2 separate distinct pieces, you're going to turn that to whatever section. So my right hand gets turned to the right, creates an opening. I insert the index finger through and hook the bottom piece to add to my left hand. Now my right hand has 1 section of hair and my left hand has 2. The process repeats. The left hand rotates to the left, insert in through the opening to hook the bottom piece of thread, and then continue the same process. Once I've hooked the thread on the braid well enough, I should be able to let go of the thread and the braid is still intact here. So now from this point, I can bring my left hand that was over my head down more comfortably, keep the sections divided as you see here, and just continue braiding to the very bottom of the thread. You will just continue braiding till you get to the very bottom until you can't go any further. Once you've braided down to the very bottom, you just want to grab the bottom of your yarn braid, twirl it around your finger to create a knot. Once you create the knot, you're going to squeeze it really tight until it's as flat and as tight as you could possibly get it. And then you're going to take your scissors once again. And then you're going to trim off the bottom piece of yarn that's underneath your knot to complete your braid. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and skim any pieces that stick out from your yarn braid as well. And then your yarn braid is complete. In this step, I have shown you in detail how to do your yarn braids. I first showed you how to section your yarn pieces, how to position your hands on your yarn, and then finally how to braid your own yarn braids. In the next step, step number 3, I will be giving you my best tips, tricks, and advice for doing your yarn braid style. Here we are in step number 3 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will be sharing with you 6 of my best tips, tricks, and advice for doing your yarn braids. Tip number 1, beauty is not pain, preventing hair loss and alopecia. If you or if anyone you know suffers from hair loss or alopecia, this is mainly specifically because they wear hairstyles that are extremely too tight. If your braids or twist or simply your weave is installed too tightly on your hair, this leads to hair loss. By putting so much tension and stress on your hair, it hurts your scalp and your hair eventually starts to break. When your yarn braids are installed and you have issues laying on your hair, or you even have to take pain medication to deal with the pain, that's because your braids are braided entirely too tight. Make sure they are installed comfortably since you will be wearing this style for a while. So in the case of beauty is pain, that is not true because beauty is not pain. Tip number 2, braiding close to your roots. When you are braiding your hair, you want to make sure that the yarn you are braided with is installed as closely to your roots as possible. This ensures that your style will look more fresh and that the braids will last a lot longer. So if you notice that as you are braiding your hair, the yarn seems to slide down your hair or start further away from your roots, simply take down the braid and restart it to make sure that it is installed properly. The difference between braids being braided close to your roots and not so close will look like the difference between a style that has been freshly installed versus a style that is probably a couple of weeks old. Tip number 3, brick parting. When you are parting and braiding your yarn braids, you want to make sure that it lays in the fashion that you would as if you were building, say, a brick wall for a home. So when you lay bricks down for a home, usually your layer consists of a brick and then another brick is put closely against that brick as well. When you lay the rest of the bricks on top, you make sure to lay them on top to where the crease is. When you are braiding your hair, by doing this brick parting or brick laying style, this ensures that more scalp is covered throughout your style. The braids are still neatly parted even though they are in brick sections. By putting them in brick parting laying types of fashion, this ensures that more of your scalp is covered for your look. Tip number 4, cutting and knotting your yarn braids. When you are doing your yarn braids, you want to make sure that you snip any pieces of yarn that sticks out from your braids. This happens simply because some of your pieces of yarn won't be identically perfectly matching in length. So sometimes you may have a little bit of thread that may stick out through your braid. go ahead and take your scissors and clip those pieces. Also, when you near the ends of your yarn braids, you want to make sure that you grab the ends, all of the yarn that's at the end, and tie it into a complete tight knot. And then you will trim off any thread that hangs below the knot of your yarn braid. Tip number 5, using acrylic yarn to do your yarn braids. When you are doing your yarn braids, it is a must that you use acrylic yarn because this yarn is the best for your style. Acrylic yarn is not so absorbent, so when you are braiding your hair, it will not take moisture from your hair, leaving your hair dry and or brittle. If you use cotton yarn or wool yarn, it will absorb as much moisture from your hair as it possibly can, and it would leave your hair very vulnerable in your style. Also, cotton yarn and wool yarn starts to lock on your hair. So as time goes on, if you have cotton and wool in your hair, it will be extremely hard and almost impossible to remove your yarn braids. So make sure that when you're doing your yarn braids, you're only using 100% acrylic yarn to do so. Last and certainly not least, tip number 6, practice. When you are doing your yarn braids, it is a must that you practice at doing your hair. Especially if you are a beginner, everything is new, all the way down to the techniques and the different ways to maintain your style. So just know, and like I always say, your first time is usually your worst time. Don't expect yourself to be 100% excellent at doing your yarn braids if this is your first try. Your first try probably won't be as successful, but if you continue to practice the tips, you will get better at doing your yarn braids. Just know in order to be perfect, you must practice. So please do not be discouraged or give up if it doesn't come out the way that you would like. Simply restart and try again to get the desired look. So there you have it, 6 of my best tips, tricks, and advice for doing your yarn braid style. In the next step, step number 4, I will show you how to do your yarn braids in a rush. Here we are in step 4 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will be showing you how to do your yarn braids in a rush. So when doing your yarn braids in a rush, this is done just to simply make it appear as if your hair is completely finished. This is extremely handy because life always happens, whether or not you have to go run errands or simply rush off to work. Sometimes you're not able to finish your style. So by doing your yarn braids in a rush, it makes it appear as if all of your hair is finished braided. So in order to do this type of style in a rush, you simply want to make sure that you do your yarn braids around the perimeter of your head. You want the thickness of your braids to be enough to cover up any hair that is undone. So right now it appears as if my hair is finished, but it's simply not. So if I go ahead and take down my hair, you can clearly tell that I have more of my natural hair in the middle of my head that needs to be braided. So every time I do my hair, when I do my yarn braids or my zillion braids or single braids, I want to make sure that I make sure to go completely around the perimeter of my head with enough braids to cover up my hair. So I probably have about 4 to 5 braids around the entire perimeter. And you don't have to braid a lot. I actually have about a palm and a half size of hair in the middle of my head, while I have braids around the edges of my head. No one would ever be able to tell that your hair is not finished braided if you braid it enough around the perimeter to cover up your hair. So depending on how thick your yarn braids are, you could probably get away with 3 braids going around the edge of your head, or maybe 4 or 5. You just want to make sure that you have enough braids braided so that when you pull the hair over your hair, it doesn't look like your style is unfinished. So that is how you do your yarn braids in a rush. In the next step, step number 5, I will show you the finished results to your yarn braids. Here we are in step 5. The finished results to your yarn braid style. Have fun rocking your new hair. So there you have it, the finished results to your yarn braid style. In the next step, step 6, I will show you how to accessorize your new hair. This is step 6 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will show you 3 easy ways to accessorize your new hair. For style number 1, I will simply be using bobby pins. For this style, I took sections of my hair near the front of my head and twisted them slightly to the right, and then I pinned each section with a bobby pin. Here is style number 1. Next will be style number 2. For style number 2, I will be using a headband, bobby pins, and a hair tie. For this style, I took a section of braids in the front of my head and pushed them in front of my face to finish styling my hair. I then grabbed my braids and put them into a high ponytail while leaving some braids down in the back of my head. I took the portion of hair that was in the front of my head, rolled it together, and pinned it into place with a couple of bobby pins. For the finishing touch, I took my red headband and placed it right behind the pompadour at the front of my head. Here you are, style number 2. Next will be style number 3. For style number 3, you will be using bobby pins and a hair tie. For this style, I grabbed the braids that was on the left front side of my head and I placed them out of the way. I then grabbed all of the rest of my braids and put them into a high ponytail slightly to the left side of my hair. With the braids that fell down towards my face, I grabbed my fingers, smoothed them down, and I simply placed bobby pins in the desired sections so that the hair would seem to gradually get longer on one side. Last but certainly not least, style number 3. So there you have it, 3 easy and simple ways to style and accessorize your yarn braids. In the next step, step number 7, I will show you how to take down and remove your braids. Welcome to step 7 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will show you how to safely take down and remove your yarn braids. When taking down your yarn braids, you want to make sure to only focus on one braid at a time. So I will take this braid that's right here in the front of my head and I will show you how to safely take down your braid. When taking down your braid, feel free to go ahead, locate the very end of the braid and cut off the knot that keeps the hair securely together. This ensures that you will not be cutting your hair as you are taking your hair down. If you would like to save time, you could go up higher on your braid and cut it, but sometimes it may be hard to tell exactly where your hair ends. So for safe practices, it's always best to locate the end of the braid, cut the knot off, and simply unravel until you've taken down your entire braid. So right now, I'm just gonna go ahead and take my scissors. Then I'm gonna come right back to my yarn braid and snip off the very bottom where that knot is. Always make sure that your knot is well past your hair so that you can safely cut your knot off from your yarn braid. So now I'm just gonna simply use my hands and unravel until I reach the very top and remove these pieces of yarn. So of course my hair is not this long, but to always make sure that I do not cut my hair, I like to cut well past my hair or just simply go to the very bottom of the braid and cut the knot off. To aid you in taking down your braid, you can also go ahead and use your comb to divide the hairs out of the way. So right now I'm going to grab my comb. And I'm going to take the small pointy end. Then I'm simply going to insert it into my braid to separate the yarn pieces. Whichever is comfortable for you, you can use your braid you can use just your hands, or you can use the rat tail end of the comb to help take them down. Take your time when taking down your hair because you do not want to rip your hair or anxiously pull at the roots of your hair just to take your braids down. Just simply continue to divide the yarn out of the way as you unravel your braid all the way to the top of your head. And there you have it. So that is how you safely take down your yarn braid extensions. Make sure to check out our videos, blogs, and online store at howtoblackhair.com. Thanks for watching.